Another emergency reaction episode as Texas Tech is set to hire Houston's defensive coordinator, Shiel to leave Houston and come to Lubbock. Our thoughts and opinions next on the Broadway Shuffle. All right, gentlemen, we are back. Another night, another Red Raider coaching change. It seems like this ever-evolving door since Saturday afternoon. We just cannot get out of the news. And here we are saying some good news. Texas Tech has hired defensive coordinator out of Houston, Shiel to come to Lubbock to be your next defensive coach. And so we are here to kind of dissect that, learn a little bit about what Shiel has to offer, and see what this means for people on your staff and players, and as we get set to enter the portal here in a week. So with Conrad and Clayton, I'm Brennan. Zyler is on baby duty this evening, so he will not be able to make it. Unfortunately, with all these quick changes and getting on this quickly as we can, you can't always get the four of us, unfortunately, but you got three of us. So we appreciate you checking out the show. So Clayton, Conrad, initial thoughts about Shiel and anything in particular? I mean, Joey moved fast here. Let's maybe go there first. Joey, this is 48 hours since Tim DeRuyter was fired on Sunday afternoon. We're here on Tuesday night, and that was fast. Clayton, surprised by how quickly he moved? Do you like the hire?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm super surprised. I feel like that just tells you that, Joey's been looking at this for a while, probably knew that he was going to part ways with DeRuyter at the end of the season for a couple weeks now. And had some candidates in mind. I do like the hire. I'd be lying if I said I knew a lot about, the schemes that he runs, but he had a great defense at Houston this year, and Houston, I don't think their personnel is very good. So, especially when you compare their offensive numbers to their defensive this year, I think that's really impressive what he was able to do. And he came from Tulane before Houston, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And Tulane's been really good in the Group of 5 the last few years. So I think, it seems a solid hire on the surface. I'll have to dig in more to see exactly what kind of defense he runs.
Yeah, Conrad, he was the defensive coordinator that shut down your boy Lincoln Riley there in the Cotton Bowl a couple years ago. So he must be a pretty good coach then if you can find a way to beat Lincoln Riley, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to ignore that. Listeners, if you're new to the show, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We want to make sure you get the best Texas Tech sports content out there as quickly as possible so that you can know what you're talking about and have all the updated information. So make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as well for subtle digs from Brennan Baxter towards me about my support of former Red Raiders. I'll say this, though. You look at, a guy like Shiel and you probably always have a list if you're a coach, if you're a head coach of guys you may be watching. I remember when Kirby made the hire for Matt Wells that he had mentioned in his press conference, or it was reported that Wells was on his list that he was kind of watching, because you always keep a list because you never know if you're going to have to let somebody go. And so I'm sure Shiel was on Joey's list just to have him be aware, and being in Texas and being aware of what's going on in the Big 12, I think that made a big difference too. Just knowing who he was, even though you didn't play him this year, you also did, scout maybe some of his, what he did against certain common opponents that you had. So I'm elated with the hire. I think it's great. And I think the biggest reason I'm elated with the hire is the numbers that just, numbers paint a very clear picture. And our numbers guru, Zyler Buchanan, can't be with us tonight as mentioned. So I'm going to try and fill that void. But I just want to read some numbers for the Red Raider faithful. The University of Houston gave up 22.9 points per game. That was 38th in the country. Your Red Raiders last year gave up 33 points a game. That was 111th in the country. Big difference there, 38 to 111, and with worse players. They also, University of Houston gave up 324 yards per game, 19th in the country. Your Red Raiders gave up 439.6 yards per game, 116th in the country. The Houston Cougars gave up 0.358 points per play, 57th in the country. Your Red Raiders gave up 0.462, 130th in the country. So you're getting the picture. There's a big difference. They also gave up 5.1 yards per play, which is 40th in the country. Your Red Raiders gave up 6.2, 109th in the country. We could keep going on and on and on.
Can we stop the bleeding here a little bit, man?
But the reality is you had such a good offense, and your defense did show up in some games that you were able to go 8-4. They were not very good. So, but as a whole, but their defense was much better than their offense, which is why they didn't do better, is because their offense was terrible.
Yeah, I'll take anything under 100. I mean, that sounds, just give any incremental improvement. And with you do play Houston next season. And so we'll see, that'll be good for you to kind of steal a coordinator within the conference. And maybe we'll do that on the offensive side of the ball. Who knows? But you also don't know with the transfer portal who he could bring over. I mean, there's always the opportunity that some of Houston's solid defensive players might want to follow him to Lubbock. And, sometimes reinforcements come with the coach as well in this era. So I don't really know who Houston had on that defense side of the ball that would be effective, that might fill a void for you. But there's also, in my biggest takeaway of this, with how fast Joey was able to move, was you've got National Signing Day and then this week, and then you've got the transfer portal opening up on Monday of next week. And this gives Coach Wood some time to get in, meet some of the guys that are thinking about staying, thinking about going, or even in, Jacob Rodriguez's case, who's one of your most solid players, he might be going to the league. He might be thinking about leaving. You don't know. And this gives him time to go in and meet some of these cats and hopefully just build some relationships and make an impact immediately on campus. So people that you do want to bring back to your roster stay on the team. So, Clayton, you hear those numbers, sounds like anything would be better than what we had last year almost, but based off of what he was able to do at Houston with still going 4-8, but with minimal talent, that should excite us as Red Raider Nation.
Agreed. And I mean, first season at Houston, it's not like he's had players there for years that he's, instilled this system. He was able to do that in the first year with the talent deficit that they were facing, pretty much every single week they played. I think that's really encouraging. And also, I don't know if the numbers bear this out, but you would think that it would be harder to put up those defensive numbers with an offense as bad as Houston's. If you're getting stuck in bad field position, or they're turning their ball over, or they're just going 3 and out, they put you back on the field. You would think that it would be more difficult to, have at least the scoring defense, not necessarily like the per play stats. But so, yeah, I mean, I'm really encouraged. Seeing him do that in year one in Houston, you would hope that we would see a sizable improvement in year one at Tech.
Yeah, and Conrad, it seems like wherever he was at Troy before Tulane. They had he was at Army before that, and a lot of his defenses have performed well. He was a secondary coach, and so it seems like he'll be able to kind of impact a lot on that side of the ball and teach up some guys. He played college football, but he is from South Carolina, so it'll be interesting because Texas Tech is such like a familiarity place. I know Joey's not necessarily from Lubbock, but Joey's a Texas guy. He wanted to hire Cumbie originally. He brought Kittley back, who went to the school, and DeRuyter and him were friends. And there's a lot of, when it comes to Texas Tech and Lubbock, you typically feel like you want people that know the community. So hopefully he fits in well, but it will be a little uncharted waters for him. There's just not a lot of familiarity with their even coaching in Texas outside of Houston, really. So that'll be interesting to see how he integrates with the people of West Texas as well.
Brennan, you want to know the best way to integrate with the people of West Texas? Win. If he wins, if he helps us win, he's gonna be beloved. And that's all.
I was going to go a different route there, but I'm glad you went there.
I just went a very simplistic route. I'm not a very smart guy, so I just wanted to be simple and straightforward up front with people. If you win, you're going to be loved in West Texas. If you don't, you're going to be disliked. I mean, you saw with your last offensive coordinator, even if you score a lot of points, if you're not Mike Leach or Cliff Kingsbury, you're not really appreciated all that much in terms of an offensive standpoint, but we'll leave that there for another episode. Just so that our listeners know a little bit about him as well. Brennan kind of alluded to this, but just to go through some of Coach Wood's previous stops. He was last year the defensive coordinator at Houston. Before that, he was the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach at Tulane. Before that, he was at Troy, the defense coordinator and safeties coach. Then in 2021, he was the co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach at Army. And then before that, he was the inside linebackers coach at Army as well. So he's a defensive guy. He's well versed in different conferences, different parts of the country. I will say I'm interested to see what this looks like from what kind of players he wants, right? I know he runs a 3-man front, and so you typically want to have a bigger nose tackle in that kind of scheme. So interested to see if we have some players here that maybe he says, I'm kind of want to move on from y'all. I think it'll be interesting too, because Houston does have some not extremely highly rated defensive players, but they've got some on the recruiting class coming in that are supposed to sign tomorrow. I think it'd be really interesting if you could kind of poach some of those guys and get them to come over, because there are a couple of them that you would want to have on your roster.
And that's an interesting point there too, that he might not want some of these guys that are currently in the room. And after reading those stats, I don't know if we want some of these guys that are currently in the room. And to be fair to the defense, they were extremely young. There were a ton of injuries. I mean, it wasn't a perfect unit, and obviously, but it wasn't a healthy unit for much of the season either. Clay, you gonna expect some pretty big changes on the roster and the transfer portal because of this hire as well in the next 6 days? I mean, we should probably be bracing for impact every day between now and the end of December.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. I don't know if I would expect him to come in and just, like clean house, like, oh, I don't want you here. Because what you said with the injuries, it's like we were trotting out a second string defensive line. So to compare those guys to like your typical, Power 5 starting defensive lines, I think would be a bit unfair to them. But yeah, of course, whenever you have a coaching change, people are going to leave on their own. He's going to come in, he's going to have his scheme that could be different than ours. Guys just may not fit. So whether it's, a mutual decision to enter the portal or just someone feeling like there's another option that could be better for them, I feel like we'll see a lot of turnover on both sides of the ball, considering we have 2 new coordinators.
Yeah, it's going to be wild to see what happens over the next 4 weeks. And I wouldn't expect him to coach the bowl game. Most new coordinators don't. So that'll be interesting to see kind of his impact on the defense at all over the next 4 weeks, because you do have a good 3 to 4 weeks off and we'll find out on Sunday what bowl you're going to. But it's looking like you'll be playing towards the end of December based off some reports that we've seen. So he will have time to practice with these guys and to kind of get in there and, start at least seeing who he's got and who's coming back, and maybe who he might want to move around, and so it'll be interesting. Yeah. And I'm excited. I think for the fan base, we talked about this on our Monday episode, but you go 8-4, you want to celebrate first time in 15 years, winning 6 Big 12 games for the first time in a while. And then boom, secondary coach, defensive coordinator fired. Monday, your OC leaves for a head coaching job. It just kind of felt like it's fun. I mean, it's cool for us to be able to sit here and talk about all these things like after the season is coming to a close, but it's like, man, can we take a deep breath? Like, are we even able to do that anymore in college football? And it's going to be interesting to see, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where we go to. But I just want to encourage Red Raider Nation just to kind of breathe. We got one of them taken care of. He seems like a very solid hire. I think we're all excited here on the show to see what he brings to the table. And let's just try to relax. But we might have to be here tomorrow to talk about the offensive coordinator hire. I don't know. It might happen tonight. Who knows? So
the Broadway Shuffle's 24/7, guys. We never stop. Mm-hmm. We're on the message boards. We're on Twitter. We don't stop. We don't sleep. Trying to get all this news to you fast. So one thing I do want to mention about the team the players that he's kind of looking at coming in. I mean, you've got, because of the youth you played last year, and we're not going to go over every single name, but the experience that guys got, that is going to be invaluable for them going forward. I mean, you think about a guy like Brendan Jordan, 4-star recruit out of Mansfield, Texas. You think about a guy like that, the experience he got playing. You think about, Chapman Lewis on the back end. You think about a guy like, Jacob Rodriguez, if he comes back, one of the best linebackers in the Big 12. I mean, you do have pieces. Ben Roberts, although he regressed a little bit last year, but maybe he's putting a better scheme for him, utilized a different way. I mean, not that he wasn't utilized well his freshman year, because he was, but you may just need a reset, and that may be what Ben needs. And so you've got some players on this defense that can be utilized correctly. I think the biggest place that he's probably going to want to see improvement is just the sheer size on the defensive line.
Mhm.
You've got to be bigger there. You've got to be more powerful there. You've got to be stronger. You got to be faster. I mean, you can't be have a small defensive line and expect to stop the run. It's just not going to happen, or even rush the passer with how big some of these interior linemen are in the Big 12. So I'm excited to see what happens there because a new coach, somebody who can recruit well as much as he's asked to, I think that'll play a big part for your defense going into next year. Because the reality is, guys, this defense could look much different going into next year than it did this past year, just personnel wise as well.
I hope it does. I mean, gosh, give me anything other than 132nd out of 133rd. You can't get much worse than that. I mean, you could,
but
but not much.
To play to play devil's advocate, though, let's just. I think the firing was absolutely justified. You had to do something, but I wonder what it would have been like if you had the guys healthy. You didn't, and you should have been better than what you were. But imagine if you have some of the guys healthy that weren't healthy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, losing Dylan Spencer, Duda Banks, you lost some guys that would have made an impact for sure. So we'll see, and hopefully those guys come back healthy. But I do think, looking at this, like the trenches just matter so much. And one thing I want to see in the portal is, you're losing Lux, you're losing Baskerville. Both of those guys were effective for you. You want to, but your secondary, like you can get away with an average secondary, especially in college. But when you just give guys time to run around and can't stop the run and can't get off the field in the trenches, that's a problem. And so, he's been a secondary guy. He's been a linebacker guy, but we need big dudes and we need them to step up and we need to get guys that can rush the edge. Whether that's John Carlos Miller, who we saw do a few times and looked pretty freaking good doing it, who's your backup tight end, or not. I mean, you got to be able to improve at the front. And I think, and that is what I want to see the most of and hear about during spring ball and all these things. But I'm excited, man. I mean, you're coming off, regardless of the coaching changes, you're coming off a great season. You went through a lot, but you found a way to get to 8 wins, which is huge. And, you get this taken care of quickly. And so I think it's good for the program. We can move forward, get excited, wish DeRuyter well, but it's time to improve, and it's a big year next year. I think Zyler mentioned it with revenue sharing, with everything changing. You've got to win. You've got to earn your stripes now in what college football is now. And coaching matters. I'll be curious to see him. I'm sure he'll get a pretty good raise to come over to Lubbock, and we'll see what happens, man. I mean, you're going to improve. That's a great thing about this. You're going to improve. Clay, any final thoughts on Coach Wood and, anything you'd like to see change, particularly on the defense side of the ball?
I'd like to see us get a little better on that side of the ball, but
I think general theme of today's reaction episode. Yeah.
No, but I have a lot of confidence in Joey. Like, I feel like he knows what he's doing and running the program. This is what you hired him for. He's not a coach who's like, based on one side of the ball and his schemes. He's more like, he knows how to run a program. So I think he knows what he's doing with this hire. And like you said, I think if we can just see some improvement on the defensive line, that in itself will make the secondary look better, regardless of, what players we have playing back there.
Yeah.
Interested as well to see who he brings with him. Obviously Yates was let go as well as DeRuyter, but who does he bring in to coach the back half of the defense? What does that look like from his perspective? All those things that will be happening in the coming days. That's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and him being a secondary guy, I'll be curious to see if maybe he takes ownership of that, and he wants to kind of run the secondary as well. We'll see. But
he's also upgrading tremendously. Guys, we just have to mention this to throw a little shade at our Houston friends, which we have many. He's upgrading in quality of life too, moving from Houston to Lubbock. So let's just leave that there.
Yeah,
great point.
We'll get to that at a later date, But as we close this reaction episode, make sure you check out our YouTube channel at the Broadway Shuffle. Thanks for checking us out. You can like this video, subscribe to our channel. We're one of the only channels out there where you get administration interviews, athlete interviews, live reactions, and you can check us out for our home team episodes every Monday and Thursday as well. So we'll be back on Thursday to go over a lot and kind of actually get to digest all this, process it, and maybe talk about a new offensive coordinator as well. But we are excited for Coach Shiel Wood to be joining the team in Texas Tech. Come on, West Texas. We'll go get a burger at Blue Sky. It'll be fun. Maybe we'll go take a DP shootout with him, tell him how the Broadway Shuffle started. And I'm sure we'll try to get Coach Wood on the show at some point too. So Conrad, Clayton, thanks for hopping on. Red Raider Nation, we're excited to see what happens, and Wreck 'em Tech.